It works, I think.
Let's go.
Okay, so Emily sounds
What am I even doing?
mildly robotic,
Doing that.
plus her camera is stuttering because of internet. And it is not my fault.
Yeah.
Normally, these things are very much my fault, but they are not today. So,
Nope.
uh, just
It's mine.
bear with it. Uh, so we're gonna go through this, go through the full episode of whatever we're talking about. MSI is happening. Yay! Emily's in Chengdu. Life is fun. People enjoy League of Legends. I'm not sure why, but they do. Uh, to start, before we get into the MSI stuff, we will quickly touch on the release of Vanguard. There's a lot of weird things going on with that one. It was released the first day of MSI, almost strategically, but you know, it is what it is. Um, any thoughts on Vanguard, quickly, before we move into MSI stuff?
I mean, so my broader thoughts, you guys can go back to the episode. I think it is I am concerned because obviously I just have my laptop here, so which is a Mac, so it's not affected and I cannot play in China anyway cuz I don't have an account for the super server. But I am concerned when I go home because like I was abundantly clear about before, it blue screen my PC and I kind of need to play League of Legends to do my job. Not to mention all of the security concerns, right? So it's let's just say concerning, and I'll leave it at that. I did notice the posts during MSI day one, um, and I saw that they did a response, kind of on Reddit, I think. But I've heard of more problems than just the Windows problems that they were pointing out. So uh,
Yeah,
hopefully people are able to get that fixed.
yeah. I mean, the a couple of things. Like one was people were saying that you have to turn on TMP settings in BIOS first, but one, like very few people actually know how to do that. So if your program is like so fucked that you need to like literally go in and manually correct BIOS settings for the computer to be functional, it's probably not a good program. And two, the I've heard people say that they have problems even when they do that. So it doesn't seem to completely fix or cover all situations.
Karen Moser, and you can enjoy
So
all the
I think
Kelsey
that
and Moser
that's
LPL content you could ever want. Subscribe now.
a
Twitch.tv slash
very
Karen Moser.
relevant a very relevant thing to talk about is just like the complete and utter deflection of blame or any conversation on this, and then people basically saying it's like one isolated issue and it's a type of issue and it's very much not. So those are my main things with it. I have not installed Vanguard. I actually just uninstalled League. I don't really play League. The only I basically just watch other people play League and download raffle files and watch like that element of League, but I don't know, man. It's actually like kind of crazy that we're here. Um,
Yeah, I've
yeah,
seen a surprising, and again, this is like a small sample size. Also, there is a delay since I'm in China, so if I ever accidentally talk over you, I'm sorry. But the like amount of people I've seen who've been playing the game for a really long time for whom this was the kind of last straw in a series of things that might not have even been in-game related. It was just kind of like, I'm getting older, player base is kind of toxic still, but I don't have the same patience for it, that kind of thing. I've seen a lot of people saying that this is like, it's like, oh, maybe this is a sign that I should just, you know, stop playing League. Like it's kind of done, which makes me sad because we've had so many conversations again, and this is in NA specifically, but about how NA is, having issues because League is not culturally relevant in North America. Um, so yeah.
yeah. It's great. We love it. But yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is just the response to it, and then coupled by like once again, you don't need a kernel level anti-cheat for this game. You just don't. I'm sorry. You just don't. So we talked more in detail about that in previous episodes if you want to see that.
Mhm.
So I will probably link that when we put this on YouTube, and then we'll go from there. But you know, MSI is happening, so that's more, I think,
Ew.
the focus of what we were going to talk about. Emily is in China, which is why her internet is bad. She didn't just like randomly downgrade, not because Chinese internet is automatically bad, but because her hotel's internet is bad. She didn't just...
Yeah, it's like literally any Wi-Fi.
Yeah, exactly. So how is Chengdu? Did you do any fun things? Did you eat hot pot? Did you get your ears cleaned? You know, I'm always like...
I've not gotten my ears cleaned. I do kind of want to do that though, just because Chengdu, for people that don't know, is like the tea capital of China, as well as one of the major like food capitals of China, and definitely the food capital of like Sichuan cuisine. And the place, apparently the park where they do like the ear cleaning, the tea house there, is like apparently insane, which is the reason why I want to go, and I'll just like have them clean my ears, I guess. Anyway, they probably need it. I have terrible hearing. But no, the city is actually really beautiful. Everyone here is super super nice, even though I really don't speak Mandarin. And tomorrow I'm not on broadcast, so while I'll be like doing a little watch party with the other people who are not on broadcast, I'll probably also try to study so I can at least like attempt to communicate. Also, I just like learning languages. But yeah, it's a really beautiful city. We did also go to the Panda. I don't even know what you'd call it, because it's like a combination like research facility slash rehab is not the word, but it's basically like just like all of this research going into preserving pandas and like conserving the bamboo that they eat and all that stuff. It's very cool because I had never seen a giant panda ever in my life until today. They are as advertised. they sit,
No false
they
advertising.
sleep, they eat, and it was exactly as advertised. They're very cute. But yeah, it was a really fun trip. A bunch of us went today, so that was cool.
To summarize, Riot will lie to you about Vanguard, but pandas will not lie to you about eating and sleeping. So good.
What they are, yeah.
Good.
I did get
pandas.
a video of one of the pandas, and when pandas eat, they just like, obviously they don't like clean as they eat, so this panda's just sitting there with like a pile of bamboo, like detritus in front of it, like on its stomach, like everywhere, and it's just sitting there continuing to eat. I was like, this is exactly as advertised. Like I said, they deliver on what they promise as pandas.
Nice. So yes, pandas are the new image of integrity in League of Legends. So yes, Chengdu seems great. I was never actually at Chengdu specific, but I do miss China a lot, so I am jealous. It is very fun. So I'm glad you're getting to experience it, as well as like the food and the tea, and also I may or may not watch the Chengdu ear cleaning clips as like a sort of porn, because I overproduce earwax and always am trying to dig the earwax out of my ears. So just to me, this seems like a very pleasurable and enjoyable experience. Anyway.
If I let you know how it is.
Sounds good. But let's talk about some MSI gameplay. And like record time for us to actually get to the gameplay, like 10 minutes. First big topic has obviously been the lane swaps. I predicted that 60% of the games would have lane swaps is obviously a little bit over, but I haven't done the
Yeah.
math on it. But I do still think that they're going to continue to be relevant, and I actually think they'll be increasingly relevant as we get more top teams on the stage, if anything. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how they have evolved throughout the play-in.
I think the kind of frustrating thing about the plans thus far, or the lane swaps we've seen in plans thus far, is that they haven't always been well executed. But speaking as like, I've kind of taken it upon myself because pretty much everyone else on the English language broadcast really just wants to see standard lanes, like skill check each other, blah blah blah. And I am a lane swap enjoyer. Even with the whole post game one of Fly PSG, which I'm sure we'll get into later. But like, I think that they are such an optimal strategy in so many different cases that we'll probably just continue to see them. And in particular, with a lot of the matchups that are really one-sided, it becomes, in my opinion, even more like favorable for those teams to lane swap. Because if you can do it well, it can give you such an advantage and such a kind of cheat code to get your bot lane out of what could be potentially a very ruthless laning phase against a very, very talented 2v2. So yeah, I mean, I am a lane swap enjoyer. Even in the, again, I don't know how much we want to get into this now, but like, because we're not, I'm sure we'll break down FlyQuest later, but like, even in the, after that game one where we're kind of like, maybe you draft, like my actual opinion on it is maybe you draft a little differently if you want to swap and you feel like your execution is better. Because I actually did think FlyQuest's execution was better until that overextension and the top side, and they kind of like game started getting out of hand after that, and it snowballed out of control. My initial review was just literally going to be holding up a whiteboard that said wave management, because it was abundantly clear that FlyQuest just had a much better understanding of wave management, to the point where it mirrored some of the things that we saw in their first series, where they had way better wave management as well. So, yeah, I mean, I think they even changed my Chiron, like lower or not Chiron, but lower third to like Emily lane swap enjoyer Rand or something like that, or like still enjoys lane swaps. I think the production actually did that to me. So I'm the biggest lane swap stan on the English language feed.
Nice. I mean, I think I also like lane swaps because it's very fun to talk about. Like the mind game for me that's very interesting is like, when do you swap again? It's like when you want to maintain your tempo lead and you want to maintain like the basically mismatch lanes, then you need to preemptively be initiating a swap before the other team tries to swap back, and that's like the most interesting element of it for me. I actually don't like the way FlyQuest manage their waves and swaps that much, which we'll talk about later, but like they seem to invariably slow push, which I don't think is always good. The other, but I think there's like, for me, I think like the way that lane swaps have are evolving is like kind of switched, and I talked about this when I went over T1 versus EST on stream. When lane swaps become the standard, it is the safe thing to do. Like when everyone is practicing a shit ton of lane swaps and scrims, it is the safe thing to do. And when you are the better team, you are more likely to swap against the shitty team, because the shitty team will get completely like, will not understand tempo as well, will not understand macro as well, and will probably lose a lot more from the swap than the smart or more experienced team. And that is not the case with how lane swaps have been for the past several years, because lane swaps have not been the standard. They've been a cheese strategy. So now like it is cheesy to try to like play a 2v2 lane and completely stomp your opponent, and the safest response is to initiate a swap, which is why like T1 initiate the swap against EST, because it is just safer for them to. They will always understand it better, more likely, and they will always get a better, get like almost a guaranteed advantage off of their tempo understanding. Whereas EST, maybe they'll cheese like a good 2v2 trade and break a game winning option, right? Like, so that's kind of like how I've seen it evolve in my head, is like the better teams will probably be the lane swap initiators, or the more coordinated teams, I should say, not necessarily like you can't be. I mean, if you're poorly coordinated, you're not a good. Anyway, we're sorry.
You're probably not winning
You
MSI if you're poorly coordinated.
Yeah, anyway,
Shocker.
so you're a better by better team, I mean not better individual players, but better coordinated team. You're probably going to be initiating the lane swap. So that's kind of how I felt about it, which is why I'm still expecting to see a lot of lane swaps. I thought it's very interesting that like Jat still calls it a suboptimal strategy, because
I disagree with them on that.
yeah, because if you do look at the patch notes, which I've done on stream multiple times now, historically the turret changes have favored lane swap coming back, and we've seen multiple instances also of top lane getting ahead in plates. Because the turret resistances have basically made the first 5 minutes differential like pretty useless. So, yep. Anyway, since we're just like speeding through this shit, but before we go,
I'm just afraid the hotel internet is gonna.
Emily's like, I'm retaining my comments so that the internet remains stable. If I make a sudden movement, the internet will disconnect.
Like move out of my chair.
So what I do want to talk about before we get into talking about like the Fly stuff and everything that I'm sure most people want us to talk about, how shit Fly is, whatever. I do want to talk about Loud and GAM, because I thought that series was very interesting, and I want to shout out GAM a little bit. But also, like, I think a lot of people kind of expected more from this Loud roster. And you get to use the joke like, hey, they lost to a pug team, ha ha ha. But like for you, why do you think Loud lost to GAM in their last series?
So I think there are more than a few things. The first thing I'll start with is draft, just because it's something that with the limited amount of time on desk, I don't really think we got to talk about all that much. But if you look at the way that Loud played, like going all the way back to last year, but like even further than that, because again, you're talking about 4 or 5 returning players, and then am I back?
You are back. I was gonna see if I was gonna maybe put Chomsky over you.
You should. Or just to still, oh god, I can see that I'm roboting. Okay.
Yeah.
What I was gonna say is that they played around root a lot, right? So going into this tournament, I was actually wondering if they were going to do lane swaps with him on a hyper carry. And we like didn't really see that, especially in the GAM series. They kind of stuck to Senna, which he was performing well on in terms of like mechanically, right? But it is very not how they played in season. So I thought that was something that I wanted to point out as like a preface. Are you?
It's fine. I'm resizing it for the future because I knew. Yep.
Yeah. Have we been successful now?
Yeah, I can hear you. I have replaced you Chomsky with an actual image view now, so we're good.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, we'll just do no video. All right, I'll speed run through what I was saying because I gave a whole thing again and didn't realize I was frozen. First thing, they played around root on carries traditionally in CBLOL. So I was surprised that they stuck to the Senna. That was the gist of what I was saying, because if I'm thinking about the way this team plays usually, that would be something that I was surprised they didn't pivot to in game 3.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the fact that I think Root Senna was good, right? Like he was performing pretty well on it. So, and I guess that's why they decided to stick with it. I would have tried to return to comfort, especially since that's exactly what GAM ended up doing, and it really worked for them. And then I think a lot of the overextensions and choice of when to fight, not being a little bit disrespectful of like not warding their flanks or preparing for how they were going to be able to turn should they get TP'd on. Obviously, that was the game breaking play in my opinion. And then come game 3, it was just kind of the Levi show for a lot of it. I think it's really it was one of those moments where I was like so happy for GAM because of all of the things that these players have been through, because of expectations, because of the match fixing being so rampant, because of people looking at this team pretty consistently, even coming to the international stage and like making jokes about, oh, these players are match fixing too, et cetera, having emergency subs. Looking back on just how much it meant for them to win the region, to come here and then to pull off this upset win was very cool to see. The flip side of it is that obviously I followed Brazil for a really, really long time. I know of a lot of a few of the players on this team, and it was so heartbreaking to see that side of it, because it really should have been a 2-0. And I'm not saying that to like disrespect GAM whatsoever, but I do think that Loud definitely had that game 2 in hand, and you could already see flashes of it previously in that game a little bit in terms of them overextending, getting a little too hyphy, choosing some not great fights that were like slightly over aggressive based on where they had pressure on the map, and it bit them in the ass in that bot side fight when they were pushing onto inhib. So it was really, really crushing to watch them come into game 3 and then have that kind of, basically it almost devolved, like I don't want to say it devolved into a solo queue game because that's a little bit disrespectful, but like a lot of what GAM were doing was just essentially locking in comfort, choosing skirmishes really well, and winning. And when Loud would tend to overextend even a little bit, they had picks to kind of kill them. It was such a risky composition for GAM to run, in my opinion, because if that comp falls behind, they're in such a bad spot. But they didn't. And yeah, I was really disappointed in Loud and their performance, because I did expect more from them in that series.
Emily is disappointed in Brazil. That's just the title of the episode now. Anyway,
No.
yeah. I mean, I'll keep this short so we can go to next topic. But I think the main thing for me was in their final push. It was just we went over it a bit as a VOD review before the stream started. In their final push, they over-indexed into one side and did not play like the Talia collapse properly, and there were several instances throughout the Talia game where they did not play the Talia collapse or the map properly, and they would have closed more efficiently if they had. So it wasn't just one overextension, in my opinion. But I do appreciate that GAM identified that and went with a comp that picks and turns situations really easily, like more TS style. And I think for some reason, Tinones was not aware that a Kali level 1 does that much damage. That's the other thing I would throw out there. But yeah, I was happy to see Gem do well. I think Emo had like a really great game that series on the Akali, and he'd been getting a lot of criticism. He scaled up in MSI, kind of like he scaled up in playoffs. So I'm hoping that stays consistent. We see more of him in the future, even when circumstances aren't shit. So, yeah. Thank you for playing for us, both Loud and GAM. Was a pleasure. And we will move on to the next one, which I would like your take on a very important question, Emily, which is T1 going to win MSI? Are they just that good?
I would put Genji as favorites over them. Not only based on the head-to-head matchup, but I just feel like in the current meta, like we said, as lane swaps evolve, Genji were already, in my opinion, a really thoughtful team around a lot of things they did in their mid game, including lane assignments. So I think they will continue to hone that from what we saw from them in playoffs moving forward, to be really, really smart about it. Not that T1 aren't, but I just think when those two teams meet each other, Genji usually have very, very good answers for what T1 want to do, even with how close this latest finals ended up being. I think it's really difficult to talk about T1 based on what we've seen from them so far, because
are you about to say something like FlyQuest is terrible? Oh my goodness, Emily, how rude.
What a shocker. Neither of their series tested them very well. Let's just say that. I think especially if we're looking at like FlyQuest being like in game 1, I don't know the exact trade because the observers didn't show it. I turned to, I think it was Raz, who I was on the desk with that day, and I was like, I wish we had pro view still, because I would want to go back and see what the decision making was on top side there. But that in the 17-minute game, for T1 to be able to get that far ahead with that composition that early, something had to go horrifically, catastrophically wrong. And what went horrifically, catastrophically wrong, in my opinion, was topside, to the point where Inspired had to essentially kind of interrupt his path to go help make sure that Bwipo could get XP without being dove. And that was it was a rough one. It was a rough one to watch. I still think T1 should be considered a favorite for the tournament. Currently, right now, I would still definitely put Genji above them, especially if those are the two teams that we're saying are like meeting each other.
I said nothing about
Genji.
Genji.
BLG yet.
I said nothing about Genji. You brought them up, so you know.
No, I like Genji. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying if T1 and Genji meet, I would still favor Genji.
Sure. I mean, they're on opposite sides of the bracket, so yeah.
yeah, they would have to meet in finals. I would want to see T1 against some tougher competition. The things I did see from them that I really liked, again, going back to lane swaps, I actually thought they showcased a solid understanding of how to swap, what they wanted to do from the like level 1 Nico feints from
Yep.
Carry I really, really liked, to like how thoughtful they were about the swap, even with Estral being able to get the successive dives off onto Zeus. I thought their understanding of it was really solid. I think they'll only improve on that going up against better teams and through scrims. But I don't think this has like from my perspective, this has not changed where I thought they were already, which is a favorite to win the tournament, but not the favorite. I still think the exact same because I haven't seen them go up against any sort of competition that's actually like threatened them in any way.
So I guess
No offense, FlyQuest and Estral, sorry.
So I guess like I actually really disliked the analysis that something went terrible in top lane and the game was just over. Because
Really?
yes, I really dislike that one because that happens in so many games. Something goes terrible top lane and the game is not over. You know, like something goes terrible and the game is not over. That I think that like undersells how well T1 played, and I think their coordination overall. So it's like yes, something went bad top, but if you go back and you look at the VOD, they do the initial dive, right? They get the kill on Zeus, and then Inspired goes back bot and farms. They don't invade. They don't do anything with their pressure. Bot lane is pushing in. Nothing's happening. They don't pressure the advantage they have. Whereas if you watch T1 with an advantage, they force Bwipo out of the game, right? Bwipo makes a mistake, burns a flash in a dive that he didn't have to burn, ends up taking one bad trade, and then suddenly they're just perma like camping him on respawn, right? They're using that and they're taking full control of the map. When they're playing out the map states, you can watch them. No, there's never a point where 3 people are showing on waves at the same time. There's never a point. It's always 2 people show, 1 person's fogging. 2 people show, 1 person's fogging. 2 people. They're playing the map insanely well, and they are constantly using TPs to keep pressure going on the map with a lead. So it's very hard to push them back when they have a lead. It's very hard to get back into the game when they have a lead, and just them getting that lead, I think, is like where they have an insane advantage and will close out better like with an advantage than any other team at the tournament, right? So that's like my thing, and the reason why I just dislike it is it's like I see so many people say like someone made a mechanical error and T1 won, but that's not what's impressive about T1. What's impressive about T1 is the level of coordination they present to completely fucking snowball and close out a game, and that's like why I still like them better than Gen G. I think Gen G do a lot of things well, but they make a lot of rotations that I don't think are necessary in order to hug midwave because Pays is like contesting midwave at bad times. So if we're comparing T1 strictly to Gen G, right, since that was the comparison, I actually think T1 still play mid game a bit better, and it's just Gen G are better at coordinating, gaining early advantage into playing the map. So, like, it's the generating of the early advantage part that I think Gen G is better. So it's, like, in my opinion, a bit similar to TES versus BLG, except TES just look like complete shit lately. That's not true. I actually like the way TES play. So for me, like, I actually think that T1 did demonstrate something impressive in those games, and it wasn't just FlyQuest inting. And everyone's calling for like FlyQuest to roster change and saying one person fucked up, etc. But it's like it's not one person fucking up; it's T1 capitalizing on one fuck up better than any other team in playing, right? So
any other team, yeah.
So that's why I dislike the narrative, because it's like Whippo randomly blows Flash in so many matches, and the game's not over for him, right? Like he has to learn that now that he's played against T1, and that's happened to him. So yeah.
Yep. True.
Hooray! But anyway, I think T1 ROP. Do I think they're winning the whole tournament? I think T1 versus BLG is super interesting, and I think TS versus Gen G is interesting. I'm actually really glad we get to see Gen G versus Fnatic. We'll maybe talk about that later because it's a good way to transition into the next topic, which is, are Fnatic and TES looking quote unquote shaky? What do you think?
I mean, I think Fnatic looks about, well, I actually think they look maybe slightly better than I expected, but it's difficult again because of some of their opponents. Specifically GAM, who I think again just weren't as well coordinated or didn't have as developed of a macro understanding, and that's because they just haven't had any time together as a team. I mean, I don't know if it's only because of that, but we'll never know because the team that played earlier in the VCS was not the team that showed up here. But I think Fnatic, coming out of it, I know Fnatic members themselves said that they feel like they've improved on a lot of things. I think I still see a lot of similar mistakes from them as I saw from them in finals. So I don't actually think they're looking, I'm not sure what the prevailing narrative is, but I if it's that they look worse than they did, I would definitely disagree with that. What is the sentiment that we're trying to cut here?
I think for me, the main sentiment is mostly just that everyone says the same thing about Fnatic as the TS right now, which is that they are just randomly fighting everything. That's the sentiment that I see is just like everyone is randomly taking fights all over the map, and it's been said about both Fnatic and TS. So I guess like when I say like shaky, or people will say like they're worried about Fnatic and TS later on in the tournament, right? So I guess from your perspective, like, do you think their fights are random, as a more specific question? And then
No.
are you very concerned that they will do poorly in the subsequent tournament?
I don't think their fights are random. So that's like the first thing. I think Fnatic can overextend at times. Or like in starting a fight, we saw this a little bit more in the second series, I think. But in starting a fight, they will not always be unified on the same page, or won't always be like in position. So that did allow more than a few times GAM to kind of come back in some of these fights. But I think I'm specifically thinking of game 2, the really, really long one. But I also think in terms of Fnatic, and then in particular top esports, I think top esports are actually really good at identifying windows to fight and really playing around. Like they theoretically want to play as aggressively and as possible. And I think they try to find windows for that a lot more than other teams. And obviously sometimes it will come and like bite them in the ass. But I thought in particular, what was it? I'm trying to load the Jackie Love, Senna, Mako, Tom Kench game, and then again in their Lucian Nami game. I thought you could see them being pretty thoughtful about when they would want to fight or when they would like, and Jack is ulting for like prio to get someone off the wave or ulting to start a fight, specifically on the Lucian. And where they were rotating the Lucian around. I thought all that was like really, really thoughtful actually. I think the problem with TES is that sometimes since they are playing with razor thin margins, sometimes they will err on the side of aggression and get punished for it because their timings will be slightly off, or they will over chase. But I didn't think they looked in terms of like when to choose fights. I thought they were like surprisingly thoughtful about it, or like I guess a lot of people weren't. I guess when you look at that, when you look at a team like Top, it's pretty infuriating because I know I've been saying that I think they're a pretty smart team. And this is one of the things that I think they're smart about. But obviously it's also not a style that's going to, I don't know how to explain it. It's not a style like BLG or T1 where a lot of the ways that they play lend themselves to like very, very one-sided wins. I don't think TES are always like that, right? Like I think sometimes they can take a little bit more time getting there, or their playstyle is not going to lend itself to absolutely mowing people over. But yeah. In particular, I know people were saying that about TES, but I was not aware they were saying it about Fnatic, because I actually thought Fnatic have performed pretty well.
I wanted to feel that way, and I felt that way for the first series. I thought Fnatic were performing pretty well, and they actually do have a very similar playstyle, like TS Fnatic in a way, where it's like, but I think TS is way more mature about it, which is they will constantly try to look like when like it's the enemy's turn to contest sidewave, TS will try to bait a fight that looks like they're playing out of numbers at disadvantage so that they can pull TPs, they can pull people, and then stall the fight so that there's a collapse. And they use Tahm Kench for this, they use Renata for this, they use like ults that kind of like extend initial fights and extend the way they're playing, and then they use spacing also very well for this. So like even if you have a numbers advantage, if you're like face checking into them and they have like Ashe Varus, they can space extremely well and get you extremely low so that suddenly, okay, like it's fucked, like I can't play. So I think that's the thing TES did, and I did a huge breakdown of it for the YouTube channel. But I think for
Nice.
Fnatic, I just watched the second game of GAM Fnatic on stream or parts of, and it was like that game just evolved
Parts of
into
that game were infuriating.
we're going to 5v5 mid, like we're both coached by XX over and over and over again. And hope that it works. And yeah, I'm hoping that was an aberration, because in general I feel like Fnatic kind of play like TS lights. Their timings are like less crisp, but they do find fights, I think, a lot more logically and in situations that are a lot smarter than a lot of people have been give them credit for. And I have enjoyed watching them play. I actually do think the way that they play for like fast plays inside is good against Genji, right? So if they drop like mid wave to contest the side lane, which both Fnatic and TS do really well, I think that that's something that works well against Genji. So I'm glad that both of these teams are on Genji's side of the bracket, because I think it'll be very interesting if they manage to like demonstrate how you can play against them. Like if Fnatic kind of show a play that like TS would do, but they don't do it as well, and it works then like I think it makes it possible for TES to upset them in the second round, right? So I like seeing both of those matchups as long as TS don't lose to TL because they're, I mean that could happen. It's it's TES, man. But yeah, I think that's like for me is very interesting, and what I'm looking forward to in particular is like that side of the bracket. I think will be super fun, stylistically speaking. Okay, now the most exciting topic of the show that everyone came here for, which is time to laugh at North America yet again.
Oh God.
For completely failing the play-in, catastrophically speaking. I think quickly to open up this one, the very topical thing is going to be Jensen's comment. That was the title of the Ashley Kang interview, which was, I think they watched like the PSG watched the match and adapted and changed what they're doing, and we just said, oh, it's expected, and didn't change what we were doing. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people reacted very negatively to that, as I'm sure you can imagine. I don't think that they're incorrect for saying that that sounds like very irresponsible and very lazy. But
All right. I dropped out of the call and now I'm back.
Okay.
Sorry.
I was talking about the Jensen Ashley Kang interview where he mentioned the we beat PSG and then we didn't really like go over it, right? And then he imagines that PSG like adapted a lot to the first round and got better and fixed up some of the problems. And a lot of people are mad about that comment. So I think it's justified that people are mad about that comment. But yeah.
Yeah, I did not see that.
Yeah, it's the Ashley interviewed Jensen after the loss. So it sounds very much like something that people have criticized NA for in the past, which is it is actually very rare for an LCS team to review their wins. It's actually so sad to say, but there's so many LCS teams that just don't review their wins, or historically, and it's kind of nuts that they don't review their wins, and that's why it's like you have to lose to take something away. But especially if you're in a region like LCS, you're never gonna improve if you only look at your losses, because usually if you're winning and you have international aspirations, there has to be something that you can take away from beating piss randoms. Like there just has to be something that you can take away, and I think the same mistakes as to why PSG FlyQuest lost to PSG in the first game of the first round were still present for the second round, and were the same reason that they lost. So yeah. Basically, she says that FlyQuest is terrible and NA is terrible, and NA shouldn't be allowed at international events anymore. We're quoting it. We're clipping it. We're shipping it. There you go. It has been said.
Oh yeah, that definitely sounds like me.
Yeah.
Going back to the prep thing though, I think so first of all, I think it's really infuriating if you are not going to review your wins for the reasons that you said before it cut out, which I think was if you are winning in NA and you are looking at going to internationals regardless, you will, especially with certain teams in the past. It didn't happen this split. I mean, it kind of happened a little bit with FlyQuest actually, but like a lot of times when you have a dominant team in LCS, if they're not reviewing their wins, that's actually so insane, because if all you're doing is winning and you're just waiting to go internationally, that means that you are spending so much time not learning or at least trying to improve. But then the other thing that I want to point out is that even with their much better understanding, in my opinion, of like the lane swap and wave management than PSG specifically in the first series, they still dropped a game. So why would you not review that series really closely to be like, hey, this was close. I think it was one of the closest. It was absolutely the closest series we've had to MSI thus far, but it was really close in that, like, when we were looking at trying to illustrate how close this was, there's a stat where you have major lead or major deficit, and 60% of the time it was within like 2 percentages of one way or the other, right? So like that means that it was essentially, the gold was insanely close for the vast majority of the series, for over 60% of it. So obviously it wasn't like, it's not like these were demonstrably super clean wins. Even if you do think and know you have a better understanding of how to lane swap than PSG, why would you not try to tighten up your execution, especially when you still dropped a game? That's actually kind of infuriating to hear.
Yeah, I was basically just saying that given the competition available to you, it's very weird that that would not be the case. I think it's interesting because Noxware, obviously, he's one of the FlyQuest podcast guys, Flight Check, is saying that a lot of he feels the coaching staff is escaping blame. I've actually seen the coaching staff very heavily criticized. So, yeah, it's definitely a coaching drop if you are not reviewing the game or you're not able to motivate your players to review the games when they're that close. So for sure, I think worth calling them out. It's just very strange in general. I do also, since I don't have a lot of time left, if you have, I will just ask you, who is winning MSI, Emily?
Ooh, it's hard. We haven't seen BLG yet. I think T1 looked really, really good. I think TES looked less so. Mainly because I still think individually TN is underperforming a bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the only reason, but it's one that stands out to me as something that better teams will definitely be able to capitalize on a lot more than TES were pushed going into the bracket stage.
Yeah.
I still kind of believe in Genji. I'm gonna tentatively still go Genji. I'll stick with it until I see them, and then if they look demonstrably less comfortable with lane swaps and being able to punish their opponents, and I'll probably flip flop.
I think BLG are the best team fighting team in the tournament. So, and I think that BLG actually improved a lot of their mid game problems. They're still there, so I'm just gonna go with BLG. Fuck it.
I was gonna say that's where, yeah. I haven't seen BLG yet, and the only thing that is keeping me from not giving the edge to them is some of their mid game macro issues.
Yeah,
Still,
but I think
I don't disagree that they've improved though.
I'm a lot lower on Genji macro than most people are, just because I do think that you can like track Chovy really well. He has to hug mid for mid prio. Like it's really weird. It's almost like NA style macro. So for me, like I think that's abusable, and I think BLG outplay them in fights. So I'm very interested because I think TS Genji can actually be very interesting match. And I think a lot of people will say that BLG might struggle with lane swaps because their advantage is they hard punish like bot 2v2. But I think that they will just play like jungle invades better than everyone, and I would argue that's probably where TES got the idea to use lane swaps to play for jungle invade and for jungle camp advantage was probably like a BLG style because they play invades so much. Obviously, this is pure speculation.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm calling BLG. I think I'm really excited with the draw. I think the draw went well and will make for a very fun tournament.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what I've got. I also posted.
I'm sorry. for my internet issues.
All good. I also, one last call out, I also posted in chat a link to the chat bracket for MSI. If you'd like to do an MSI bracket, there's prizes for chat if chat wins. So, and by chat, I mean anyone in
Ooh.
chat. So, like, I gave prizes to the winners of the LPL bracket from chat. So, yeah, if you'd like to join. And make your own sheet, and we'll all tally up the points similar to the way I did the
I
LPL
will
one.
join.
And since Emily is the reigning chat bracket champion, so we'll we'll call it good. But thanks everyone. I will edit this
Time
down.
to run it down at MSI.
Emily is confirmed running it down. Got it. Thanks everyone. It's been fun. Thanks for bearing with the tech issues. I will try to edit as much of this for YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're on Spotify, I don't know, send me a DM or a tweet and say thank you for putting it on Spotify, so that I know that you are enjoying it on Spotify.